Hi, everybody. Leon Thomas here with Miranda Kittle and Lynch. We are the host of Checking In. Thanks for watching. Hi, Miranda. How are you?
Hi, Leon. I'm great. How's it going over there?
Everything is just groovy. It's really, really groovy. Yeah,
Ruby is good.
groovy is good. All right. So you got to check out why I'm saying groovy, right? And it's not even about me. I mean,
Okay.
Would you say I'm groovy though?
Sure.
Was that a yes, you would, or go with that, or I
I would
am
say
groovy?
yes, you are groovy.
I am groovy. Okay. Thank you. Thank you. I would agree with you too. I would agree. All right. This is my uncle,
Oh,
Reverend James Smith.
okay.
This was the newspaper that the family printed going into a week before his 100th birthday.
Oh, wow.
He is now 101 and 8 months
Wow.
and still doing great.
All right. So give me all his tips and tricks, the secrets.
Decaf coffee followed by water continuously throughout the day.
Oh, my.
Decaf and water, just that's what he does. A strong believer in God, retired pastor, and he's still preaching. And yesterday, I was there when he preached at a church in Baltimore, and he preached strong. That's like I don't know, like a 70-year-old, a 65-year-old even.
That's
Yes.
really
So
amazing.
it is amazing. So
All
really
right.
happy for him. So that's one of the groovinesses. Is that a word?
Sure.
We'll
Let's
go
make
with
it
that
good.
too. Sure. Yeah, one of the
All right.
grooviness.
So add to my shopping list decaf coffee.
Yes. Followed by water though. Decaf and water, just all day. Just decaf
I'm,
and water.
I'm good with water. I'm good on
Right?
that. I just need to add the decaf. That's
Hmm.
funny. We have decaf coffee in our house because my youngest likes to have coffee milk in the morning. And I'm not giving her regular coffee. So I just water down decaf coffee really, really good. And she has her coffee and her 8 gallons of sugar and some milk.
Well, there you go. There you go. Folks, we're at episode what we're counting as 101, episode 101. And if you want to listen to any of the past episodes, go to your favorite podcast platform. You'll find us there. And if you'd like to be a guest on the show, you can contact Miranda by
Just
searching for her.
Yep,
At,
just put me in your favorite search engine and I'll pop up.
yep. Or you can send me an email. That's Leon at leonthomasgroup.com. Love to have you be a part of the show. If you know someone that would make a great guest on the show, like our guest today was recommended from a friend. And so we're happy to have our guest on. And so you ready? Shall we
I,
bring Josh
I'm
in?
so excited to learn more about this company. Hi.
Hey everybody, how you doing?
Amazing, amazing. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Glad to be here. Glad to be here.
Awesome. So, I don't know as much as I'd like to about your company, but before we jump into my questions, could you share with our listeners who you are and what you do?
Yeah, sure. So, Josh Graham, I'm head of market development for Cloudbeds, which means I get to spend a lot of my time making noise and opening doors. Been involved with hospitality for about 30 years, spent almost a decade on the operations end of the business, both at branded and independent hotels, mostly here in the Washington, D.C. area, and then moved over to the tech side of the business back in 2007. Worked for a company called Travel Click. Was there for 13 years. Went from a like territory-based salesperson up to a regional VP, and did a whole bunch of different things in the middle. And then after I left there, I've done stints in revenue management, a couple different revenue management companies, Salesforce, working with their CRM marketing cloud side of things. Yeah, ended up here at Cloudbeds about almost a year ago now, actually. So August of last year.
Very cool. Is this a position that you ever saw yourself in? Was this something that you set out to pursue?
Well, it's actually kind of funny. So I have always said that I would never work for a PMS company. So in my experience, in a lot of my roles, PMSs were where, customer dreams and my deals and guest experience all went to die. And the great thing is that working for Cloudbeds, I still don't work for a PMS company. Certainly not by those metrics. We're much more innovative, and we actually do some really interesting and exciting stuff. I love this role. In the sense that it lets me see a whole bunch of different parts of the industry. Not necessarily one that I had sort of envisioned, but when I heard about it, it was like, yeah, that's a pretty solid fit for me.
Very cool. Very cool. So you must have a good elevator pitch when you're introducing Cloudbeds to new audiences.
Yeah, I'd like to think so. I think anybody who knows me knows that my elevator rides are really long. I very rarely meet 6 words I couldn't say in 60. But yeah, no, I've done my best to develop the Cloudbeds elevator pitch.
Awesome. Leon?
Yeah. Josh, when one looks at your LinkedIn profile or hears about you, you have a background in operations,
Yeah.
right? And you've merged the tech and everything else with it. Tell us about your operational background and how does that help you at Cloudbits?
Yeah. So, as I sometimes introduce myself, my name is Josh Graham. I'm a recovering front desk clerk. I think it's actually critically important for anyone who wants to work on either the tech or management or in sort of areas that touch into hospitality that you have some sort of experience on property. It informs so much of what I do today. And I was lucky to work in some great front of house positions, concierge, guest services, et cetera. And really learned a little bit about, how to take care of guests and have kind of been able to continue that thread through in my roles. As I work with hoteliers today, understanding that tech is not there simply for the sake of tech. And I think, you get a lot of tech companies, especially those from outside the industry, that, it's tech's in the service of tech, right? And, you sort of realize in hospitality, it's about providing those memorable moments. I was talking with someone and we were talking about why big tech writ large has not always been able to handle travel very well. And I think because there's a very large element of hospitality, especially hotels, that aren't particularly logical, right? Yes, you get the person who's traveling for business or to a conference and they need to be at a hotel that's near a convention center for 3 days. They're in, they're out, and they're gone. But a lot of travel is for much more complicated reasons, right? Sometimes it's for joy, sometimes it's for grief. Sometimes it's, about discovery, and sometimes it's about self-discovery. And these things aren't always logical. So understanding that hoteliers use our technology to be able to provide those sorts of experiences, I think is really, really important.
Mhm.
Yeah, absolutely.
One of the things that I've seen is that there are folks that are not only in the hotel business, but in any industry that are working tech on the tech side of that business, and they don't know anything about the frontline customer that their client is serving.
Mm-hmm.
And they really can't even talk the shop. They can't describe how this is going to help the customer, how it helps you serve the customer better, right? And I think it's so critical that folks that are working in that tech that supports whatever industry it is, right, that you have
Yeah.
a good understanding of how it all comes together. And you clearly have that.
Well, I like to think so. And to be sure, it's a tricky balance, right? Because by the same, or maybe it's the flip side, I think the worst words to ever hear a tech provider say are built by hoteliers for hoteliers. And I think that because hospitality doesn't necessarily know tech very well either, right? Very few people got into hospitality because they were really into tech. And so, especially when it comes to internet tech, I actually recently spoke at High Tech and was talking about how, if you go back, 20 years, hotels were where people had better technology than they did at home, or cooler technology than they did at home. And with the internet revolution, that switch actually started flipping, right? Hotels were able to do really cool stuff, whether it was keyless cards before there were smart homes, whether it was, kiosks at airports where you could land and pick up a phone and like have a hotline to an airport hotel before we all had cell phones and Google Maps, right? Imagine like being a kid on vacation and watching Sunday cartoons on a Tuesday afternoon when, pay-per-view, right? Before we all had the entire Cartoon Network library on our phones in our pocket, right? And so, but something happened along the way, and now people have better tech at home than they do in a hotel room half the time. I travel for work and I can't connect my devices to a TV screen in a hotel. It's like, I have a bag of adapters and cables. It's a pain in the neck, right? And so the idea that hotels are behind the curve on technology is actually a more recent thing. So at the same time, right, you want people who understand the business, but you also need people who are not blinders on by the business. I mean, there's that Henry Ford quote, right? If I asked my customers what they wanted, they would have told me faster horses.
Yeah. So speaking of technology, what's one innovation that you think is overhyped? Because I know that that's a big precaution. People are hesitant to adopt new technologies because they can be expensive and there's a learning curve and you don't know if you need it or if it's just, as I said, just an overhyped aspect. What's something that you think that we've been hasty to adopt in our industry that you think may not be all it's cracked up to be, if that makes sense?
It's a good question. So, Miranda, I think you, like I, have seen a lot of these hype cycles come and go, right? We don't even have to go that far back when, we were all going to rebuild our CRS systems on the blockchains, or suddenly we all needed legless avatars because all of our meeting space was going to be in the metaverse or something like that. And and then we were all going to make a mint with NFTs or something. So like, there's always something, right? I think what's interesting is that, and there's certainly a lot of I when it comes to AI. So AI, I think, is simultaneously overhyped and underappreciated. And I say that for the following reason. A lot of the hype around AI, a lot of what we see as consumers right now, what we're touching, is generative AI, right? It's around creating content. And it's really exciting, but it doesn't do much for operations, right? Helps out marketing, revenue management a little bit, not so much. But like, Leon, to your point earlier about like dealing with guests and understanding those processes, it doesn't do much, right? But you look at what AI can do: agentic, causal, multimodal, different forms of AI. And at Cloudbeds, our belief is that the era of AI-driven operations is coming, if it's not already here, right? And I think people don't really fully understand that. Imagine going back. So ChatGPT launched publicly about 3 years ago, a little less than, right? And I remember it first came out, you're like, oh, it has all these hallucinations, or, AI can't do art because the hands are always messed up. Yeah, but in a few months time, they fixed those things are fixed, right? And so it's happening so rapidly. And I think that's the thing. So Miranda, I don't know if that really answers your question, but I would say it's something that's both hyped and underappreciated.
Yeah, no, that's perfect. That was actually going to be my follow-up question. What do you think that we should focus more on? Personally, what with AI creeping into every aspect of life, if you will,
Mhm.
on a personal note, what do you not want to see it reach into? Is there any aspect of our operations, of our industry, that you hope that AI never fits into?
I mean, that's a tough one, right? I think that you're going to start to see it reach into almost everything. And I think it's also important to understand a little bit of the difference between accommodation driven hospitality and experience driven hospitality. And so, I kind of touched on this earlier, right? The guy traveling for business that like just needs to be near a place is probably asleep in the room for longer than they're awake in the room. That's a accommodation, right? And somebody who's traveling vacation or for all these other reasons, that's experience, right? And so hopefully we don't try to replace experience driven hospitality with AI, because that's the soul of hospitality. That's that sort of human connection. But all of the accommodation aspects of it, I think there's so much, right? And when we look at especially the challenges that the industry that we love has been facing, right? Staffing and all of these different things that have really been popping up over the last several years, which, if we're being honest, turnover is not a new problem. Right? Like turnover didn't magically start happening in hotels in 2020. Like it was always a problem when I was doing scheduling in the 90s, right? So I think that honestly, AI is going to start to reach into almost everything except for that person at the front desk. I think the person at the front desk is still going to be there. Are there going to be as many of them? That's a question.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Josh, let's talk some about cloud beds. As I understand it, you're way more than just a PMS, right? To check them in, check them out, and schedule housekeepers.
Yeah.
Tell us some about cloud beds.
Yeah, so Cloudbed's actually got our start as almost like an all-in-one. We started off with a booking engine, then added a channel manager, then added a PMS capabilities. And then over the years, we more truly became an all-in-one as we added marketing, revenue management, different sort of pieces of that. And then we kind of took the next step in our evolution when we opened up our platform to some of the amazing integration partners that we have now. Which really allows us to have a more unique offering where a small hotel can use us for the vast majority, if not all, of their tech needs. Whereas a large hotel can then plug in and play with a larger ecosystem, right? And so, whereas most other property management systems fall into one of those two paradigms, we really are pretty uniquely positioned to be a more flexible solution for more types of properties. That's why I have properties on our platform that range from 5 rooms on a beach in Thailand somewhere to 2,800 rooms, in Orlando, right? So the scope of accommodations. But what really excites me is how we're looking at the future. So one of the things, Miranda, we mentioned AI earlier, right? And so generic AI doesn't speak hospitality. And what do I mean by that? I mean that, the data that's used to train these large language models, little bits are called tokens. And if you look at the percentage of tokens that come from our industry, it's less than 0.004%, a rounding error, right? And now compare that to, let's say, literature or finance or healthcare. And those percentages are like 15 to 20%, generally speaking. So you see the difference. So in other words, if I go to a generic LLM and I say, how do you help me improve pickup? It may very well tell me to install a turbocharger on my car. It doesn't know what pickup means in the hotel context, right? So what we're building is the first what's called vertical LLM for hospitality. And so where we see that, we'll call that signals. And so what we're seeing is the ability to plug that into our entire ecosystem and enable it to be really smart and do really cool things. Now, that's a long-term vision that we have, but we have a couple of pieces that are coming into reality right now.
That's great. So whenever you're talking to people about switching to a more modern PMS system, right? What are some reasons that people might give for not wanting to do it?
Oh, well, I mean, some of the sort of usual suspects, I would say. Honestly, changing systems is hard. Change in general is hard. We as a species don't typically love change. We get used to doing things certain ways. And then when we look at new systems, we often ask the question, well, does it do it the way that I do it in this old system? Instead of saying, what are all the new things that a new system can bring, right? And so I think we hear that a lot. And it's something that I talk with my team about, that you're not just sort of it's not just about telling people that what we do is better. It's that what we do is better enough that it's worth the hassle of the change. Now, we do a lot of things to try to make that change easier, right? We think about UX a lot. We think about intuitiveness. I don't think any of the three of us would go out and buy a new cell phone if it took us 2 to 3 weeks to learn how to use a new cell phone, but that's what we expect our team members to do with a new PMS. And so, we have to think about that. Not we ask Cloudbed's customers to do that. Our typical training cycle is about 8 hours, and people are running solo shifts in a week. But there's a lot of other systems out there that have those longer training requirements. So I often hear that, Miranda, things like that. So yeah.
Yeah, I can definitely relate. I refuse. My husband keeps trying to get me to upgrade my vehicle, and I'm just like, I don't want to learn anything. There's too much technology. It's not going to work the same way mine does. I just don't want something new.
The struggle is real.
Wow. Okay, let's talk vehicles here. I have a 2012 Nissan Sentra. Love it. And I have a CD player that I don't use it. I wanted to connect my phone. This was on a couple of days ago. I wanted to connect my phone to my car, and the car does not have Bluetooth. Right,
Oh,
so I had to go
wow.
to an electronics store and get an aux cord and plug it in there. And I was describing my situation, the lady at the store is like, "Why don't you just get a Bluetooth adapter on your car?" Like, no, I'm not gonna do that. Not gonna do that. So I love being the old school. And Josh, you were talking about that learning curve and new training, right? I remember when we switched from hard keys to card keys.
Right. Yeah.
And I was one of the people saying, it ain't going to happen. No one's going to like this. We don't even know how to make a key. This one, I can see a room number or code and go here. And the training was not good on how to use the key machine, right? And so I remember all of that, but I know how it is now that, things are done so intuitively. You assign them a room, the key spits out, or the message goes to their phone, and oh yeah, it's all kind of groovy things happening there now.
Yeah.
I like that. Yeah. So Josh, tell us something about tell us some more about cloud beds before we go to our signature questions, because we have 3 signature questions we want to make sure we have time for. Tell us some more groovy things about cloud beds.
Well, let's see some groovy things about Cloudbeds that aren't your typical sales pitch. So we've got about 700 employees in around 41 countries. We're a fully remote company. And one of the things that I think is particularly cool about that is that the way that we've worked to build and maintain the culture of the company over the years. It's really fun. People do, like, on their own accord, often, like meetups when they travel. People travel on vacation and sort of like, we'll actually schedule, hey, I'm going to be in this, here on vacation. Does anybody want to grab a coffee? Kind of things like that. So we do some cool stuff. Our founders are from San Diego, so we have a small office in San Diego that people, got about 30 or 40 people in the San Diego area. Not all of whom go to the office every day, but we've got it. We've also got like a small apartment. Anybody that works for Cloudbeds that visits San Diego can use. So it's kind of some cool things like that, which is kind of neat.
That is
Nice.
really cool. I love the
Yeah,
culture that you're describing. So
nice.
if Cloud Beds was a cocktail, what would be in it?
Well, I stopped drinking about a year and a half, 2 years ago. So I gotta put my thinking hat on here. Cloudbeds was a cocktail. Well, I mean, since we're founded in San Diego, and I'm when I did drink, mezcal was my drink of choice. So I'd have to say that we're close enough to the border. So our cocktail would have to be something with sort of mezcal based, or maybe tequila. Although I prefer mezcal. For years we've been blue, but we're actually, I don't know if I should say this, but we're doing a rebranding over the summer. So our color scheme is going to change. So I have to be a little nervous. I wouldn't want to pick a color for the cocktail. Well, actually, I know what the new colors are. I just can't disclose those just yet. My VP of marketing would be extremely unhappy if I spilled the beans. But I would say we'd be, I think of the personality of a cocktail would be a little bit rebellious, a little different, go against the grain, but at the same time, not be particularly spirit forward. We probably, because we like to see ourselves a little bit more caring. So I think it'd certainly be, there'd be some fruit in there to kind of make it to go down a little smoother. Sorry, that's the best I can do.
I love it. No, I think you did great.
I did not get prepped for this question. So.
That was good. That was good. Now, on our 100th episode, Miranda and I we interviewed each other, and Miranda asked me a similar question, and my answer was vodka and water, and she laughed at my answer. I don't understand vodka and water. What's wrong with vodka and water? Why was that laugh worthy? I'm
Vodka
fine with.
and tonic water, like that's a thing, but vodka just like tap water and
Oh,
vodka.
not tap water, bottled water, but yeah, you get the idea. Yeah, vodka and water. Yeah.
So That's just weak vodka. That's
Oh,
like
oh, it's making me. I feel like it would not go down smoothly.
Leon, I know you and I vibe on crab cakes, and I'm willing to do the bean pie challenge, which I know Miranda doesn't think exists. But I'm with Miranda on the cocktail side of things. So if all three of us go out and grab a meal together, Miranda's ordering drinks, you're on food, and I'll just I'm
Listen, I'm ordering decaf coffees and waters all around.
All around. Wow. Wow. Well, you've teased our signature questions. Let's go ahead for those, but we have some special pieces related to our signature questions. So let's go into our signature questions of the show. So I know one of the questions. I know the answer you're going to give to one of these questions, and that's about, have you ever had a Maryland crab cake? You're in DC. You talked about being in the DC area, so you have had a Maryland crab cake before.
I have had Maryland crab cakes, Maryland crabs. I try at least once a year to get down to the shore and get crabs. So yeah,
You have had those. All right, now you got to see this. Let me just change. Look at that. There's some bean pie. We talked about bean pie some, right? Have you ever had bean pie?
I've heard the legend. I have never experienced it myself.
Now, bean pie, the safe way that I get my bean pie from, 2 days ago, they were down to 2 pies.
So
Down to
somebody's
two.
buying this.
That whole area is usually packed. That whole cooler section is packed with bean pies.
What kind of beans go in a bean pie?
Well, I have a bean pie. Just happen to have one.
I think it's magic beans.
I shall return. Y'all go ahead and talk for 15 seconds. I'll read the ingredients to you.
I will never. I truly need to hold it in my hands and taste it myself to believe that this is real.
Is it like a red bean pie? Is it like a black eyed pea pie? Like,
I have no idea. And I know that we have a video describing bean pie, and I know we've been talking about it for years. I've had a meat pie, I've had a crawfish pie, I've had a tomato pie. I've never in my life like come across a bean pie.
Okay, here we go. Well, we got to put glasses on for this one. Wow.
we're a gentleman of a certain age, Leon.
Yes, I am. Navy beans.
See, okay.
Yeah, that's the
Navy.
main ingredient. This is navy beans, all right?
Okay,
Well,
navy.
here's what we're going to do. We're going to do the unwrap here. There's the what it looked. There's the filling
Okay, okay.
right there. It's all there live. Here we go. And
I feel like that could be anything. You can make that label.
Yeah. I mean, look, there are some interesting things. I mean, like, DC's got half smokes, and like there's this thing called mumbo sauce. I was in New Jersey, and I saw mumbo sauce in a grocery store, and I was like, wow, some of this stuff. So hey, maybe bean pies will make their way down to Florida.
now, before we go to our final signature question, we
Yeah.
talked some about AI. I want to give an AI demonstration regarding bean pie.
Okay.
AI has created, with some assistance, a bean pie song. Let's play that now.
What advice does your 20-year-old self need to know? That's the signature question that ends the show. Crab cakes come up before we say goodbye, and we also ask, have you ever had bean pie? Bean pie rocks, bean pie rules. So good, you'll take it to school. Bean pie, tasty and sweet. Bean pie can't be beat.
And if you want to hear the rest of the song, go to YouTube and search Bean Pie Anthem. It's there.
Miranda, to your earlier question about some things that AI shouldn't get involved in, I think we may have answered that question with that last video.
Amazing.
The Bean Pie Anthem. Okay, go ahead, Miranda.
Okay, I'll close this out with my question for you. If you could go back and give your 20-year-old self one piece of advice, pearl of wisdom, affirmation, anything, what would it be?
It's a long list. I've learned a lot of lessons since I was 20 years old. I was actually, quite frankly, a bit of a dumb blankety blank back then. So there's a lot that I could think of. Oh boy, what's one thing? Take a second and breathe. I think especially when I was younger, and it's something I don't want to say struggle with because I've gotten better at it, but it's something I still sort of have to sometimes consciously remind myself of, which is that you don't have to react to everything immediately. Take a second and breathe. And also, when you're enjoying something, just take a second and breathe and enjoy it. right? You don't have to get to the next thing so quickly. So just generally speaking, take a second and breathe.
That's good advice. Good
Right
advice at
on.
any age.
Right on. Yes.
So.
And Josh, if folks want to learn more about you, communicate with you, or cloud beds, you can go to your website is cloudbeds.com, right?
Yep.
And they can find you on LinkedIn.
Yeah. Yep.
All right.
I
Right.
also accept carrier pigeons. No, I don't.
And since you're close to where I am in Baltimore, I look forward to getting together with you for some Maryland steamed crabs, as we see there that we had at Costas, Costas Inn in Dundalk, Maryland. So, Josh, looking forward to that connection, and we can get some bean pie and crabs and have Miranda with us to give us decaf coffee and water. Yes.
I'll take the real stuff when it comes to coffee, but the fake stuff when
Right
it
on.
comes to
You
beer.
got it.
Right
Thank
on.
you so
Josh,
much for being with us.
yes.
My pleasure. Thanks for having
Thank
me
you.
on.
Thank you, Josh. Thank you. Miranda, really cool. Josh, a lot of things going on there. I love the many areas of cloud beds and just love his perspective on so many things.
Yeah, and what a fun company culture. I think that that's just so cool. I love seeing that.
Yeah. And for anyone with cloud beds, when you come to the Baltimore area, you can do a couple things. We can get together and have decaf coffee, water, vodka water. We can have some bean pie, or you can even, when you're in Baltimore, come join me on the racquetball court, right? Just yeah, I run a racquetball program, racquetballrevival.com. You can show up there. I mean, if you're traveling around, you have nothing else to do. I mean, what are you going to do after you've met with your client during the day? You can
I
come
mean,
play
you got to burn
racquetball.
off all that pie. So,
You have to do it. You have to do it. You're still not convinced though. You even said you can make a label. Wow, that is great. That is great. Well, folks, thanks for watching this episode of Checking In. That's Miranda. I'm Leon. Thanks for watching our show. Thanks for your support. We'll see you next time. Take care.